All right, everyone. I'm live here with Bill Ottman, the CEO of Minds.com. He's graciously decided to appear today. Bill, welcome aboard.
Thanks for having me.
And so I'm just going to ask him a series of questions here. Now, in full disclosure to everyone, of course, that's a fan here, you're an Ottman fan, you use Minds.com, maybe you've seen it there, you're one of my fans. I have never conducted an interview before, and certainly never via live on Google Hangout. This is a little bit on the touch and go side. If there are any audio interruptions, any problems like that, I do apologize. Try to reconnect things as much as possible. But I'm going to get right into it because we've got some important topics that we need to discuss here. I think big tech versus free tech, open source on everyone's minds at the moment. So I'm just going to get right into it. First, I would like to ask this, because I've talked to people before that don't even know that Minds.com actually exists. They don't know you exist. They don't know about Minds. They don't know about any sort of alternatives to the big tech thing. They know about Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Maybe they know about a few other smaller sites. It's about it. So I'd like to ask you what specifically, assuming that you were talking to somebody who had no idea at all, they don't know anything about Minds, how would you sum up the overall official mission statement of your actual website? What actually is Minds.com physically for in a functional manner, as well as any ideology or lack of ideology as well behind it?
So Minds is a community-owned and open source social networking platform. So we just conducted a new form of crowdfunding, which is called equity crowdfunding. Sorry if there's a little noise, where investors actually get future equity stake in the company. So if you check out wefunder.com/minds, we actually set the record for the fastest regulation crowdfunding to $1 million. And because we just want to be as transparent as possible. We have to disclose multiple years of our financials. Our whole process is out there, filed with the SEC website. And additionally, our software is open source. Now, a lot of people don't know what open source is, but generally it's going with the mission of transparency. So anyone can take our code, do whatever they want with it. They can make their own social networking app. They can help us build the features that go along with it. I compare open source to organic food or labeled food. So you have conventional tech, conventional food is sort of poison. Open source tells you what's in it. It's sourced from better materials, more ethical materials.
And so it's a little bit more on the healthy and homeopathic side, as opposed to sort of maybe we'd say Monsanto version of social media per se.
Yes, exactly. And the other key thing about Minds is that we share revenue. So this goes along with the community-owned aspect, but we have a suite of monetization features to help people make money online. We see everything that's going on with demonetization and restrictive algorithms on other networks. So if you hit up minds.com/monetization, we have a subscription crowdfunding tool for users similar to Patreon, but open source. So you can set reward tiers and people can wire you money on either a one-time or recurring basis in exchange for different rewards that you set. We also have an affiliate program where we give 25% of our revenue to the people who help bring it to the network. So we're literally, 25% of our revenue is just being given to the people who, if they bring people to buy promoted posts or a variety of other components. So if you go to minds.com/affiliates, you can see that. And so, yeah, it's really just all about sharing the code, sharing the revenue. We have a reward system where you earn digital currency for a variety of activity on the app. So if you check in, if you upload, if people vote on your stuff, if people comment on your stuff, you're earning these points. 1 point equals 1 view. So if you have a photo or video you want to boost, you click boost, 1,000 points, you get 1,000 extra views on your post. So actually, interestingly, people are finding that it's easier to get exposure on Minds, even though we're much smaller than the major networks. But because of the boost system, on these other networks, their newsfeed algorithms are all restrictive now. They don't even let you reach all your followers, and you're speaking to a void. So it's really hard to get seen unless you pay.
Just as an aside, I have noticed I have far fewer people following me on Minds. It's so much better though than Facebook, which I guess is structurally comparable in the sense of posts. It's head and shoulders above it. Facebook wants to charge me only real money to boost anything. So in full disclosure here, a little bit of bias on my part, but I do use Minds. I actually really love your site. And the boosting system, as far as I'm concerned, works perfectly. But we've also got to talk about what people perceive of, at least in perhaps we would think of mainstream media land, the dark side of Minds, which of course is, as with other sites, you have been tarred and feathered as a far-right echo chamber. Now, I use Minds. I don't consider myself part of the far-right, but how would you respond as the CEO of Minds? How do you respond to claims from some of the older media outlets, some of these gargantuan companies that say that you're a hotbed of extremism, that you are indeed an echo chamber for these groups of one form or another?
I actually haven't seen too much of that in terms of calling us. We definitely have a strong libertarian base, and yeah, sure, a little bit of the more far right stuff, but our original community was highly progressive. So you'll see progressive voices like, at least rational progressive voices like Lee Camp, Douglas Rushkoff, just Tim, well, Tim Cass is more centrist, sort of non-polarized, but we've really made an effort to maintain neutrality in terms of our messaging. I mean, it's essential to be non-polarized, and I think some of the other alternative networks have fallen into the trap of polarizing a bit too much. There really hasn't been much negative press coverage on us in that regard. If you actually look through the history, it's been very favorable. And I think that our transparency commitment has caused the media to cover us a bit more favorably.
Yes, I've noticed that you've taken a little bit less fire. I've seen other people who I think have a certain ideological axe to grind. That's, again, just my opinion, who have said that Minds, that's a negative thing, actually, about Minds, that you're attacked less. And so I guess the idea is that because there's common sense there, something must be amiss. Like we exist in this sort of realm of chaos, I think. How would you respond to people, not necessarily the media, the politicians, you know, the more elite people within society, but the regular user who may be used to the chaos that they see on some other sites, including, by the way, YouTube's Twitter page infamously posting very political material on a fairly regular basis, people being primed to that. How would you respond to the fact that Minds separates itself slightly from, I think, some of that phrase, tries to stay above it to some degree?
Yeah, I mean, there have been some efforts to pigeonhole us a little, but I mean, in regards to extremism on the left and right, it's I just always bring up this man. His name's Daryl Davis. He is an African-American guy who has befriended all these members of the KKK. And he's actually caused over 200 members of the KKK to turn over their robes because they got to be friends and the humanity was evident. And, you know, that is how you solve social problems. So all of this push to censor as a means to protect people, you know, our policy is that if it's legal in the US, it can stay on the site, and obviously no inciting violence or anything like that. But free speech is essential into causing the bad ideas to be exposed and then changed. So, you know, the way that Daryl Davis is confronting the KKK members, I consider the same thing when people are confronting each other online. You have to let the conversations occur, and they sort of cleanse themselves, I think.
And so as well, I needed to ask this. This was one that was important to me because I hear both extremes echoed repeatedly. There are some people that are extremely optimistic about the future. They're like, oh, well, the old highly censored tech, it's going to be in decline or maybe already is. Other people are like, no, they've taken over forever. We're basically doomed. Where would you fall on that spectrum? Do you think that the more ethical, free, open, some say alt tech side, are you optimistic about its growth, its chances of maybe supplanting or at least continuing to compete with old tech? Or do you take up that more pessimistic line where you're like, well, it's kind of touch and go. There can be problems because all of these old groups, they have billions of dollars, some of them tens or hundreds of billions to throw around. How it's sort of like a David and Goliath style situation. What would your feelings be on that?
I feel it's inevitable that a free, open alternative rises to the very top. I compare it, like I did before, to the organic evolution of food. I mean, McDonald's, all the conventional food companies were dominating in exactly the same position, and all of these more grassroots, local movements have become totally dominant, and organic food is an exploding movement. Additionally, in terms of tech, look at Wikipedia. I mean, Wikipedia is open source, open data. They disrupted all of the major, remember those Encarta back in the day on like those encyclopedias that you would use? Those are all proprietary. They don't share any of the information. It's non-community driven. They're irrelevant at this point. Not that Wikipedia is always the 100% most accurate source. I mean, but it's definitely getting better over time. They have their own issues with administration as well, but I think that it's certainly a step in the right direction. Of the top 100 sites on the internet, there's only a couple open source. You have Wikipedia, they're in the top 10 site. I mean, they're a key example of how this can be successful in the social networking realm. But then look at WordPress. WordPress is an open source content management system. 25% of the internet uses WordPress for their website. They are a community-driven project. All the code is open source. They've shown that they can monetize and actually be a sustainable business alongside having ethics. So, you know, in regards to all of the other areas on the internet, video, social networking, it's going to happen. It seems inevitable that open source, freedom of speech, decentralization, these are going to rise up. It's happening.
And I hope that you're right about that. I actually use WordPress as well. You know, mine's WordPress, all of these sites. Sometimes the functionality is far better. Like I said, mine's never has maintenance problems like Facebook does. Some of the new video hosting sites, same thing as opposed to YouTube. Yesterday, it was touch and go as to whether it even worked. How would you say, what would be the individual's responsibility, though, with the rise of these new movements, these new sites, Minds and all of the others? What can individuals do to help out? Because I know in the past, and I was part of this maybe 10 years ago, on the older social media sites when they were newer, when they were still slightly accountable, there was a general prevailing feeling, whether it was political, social, it didn't really matter. The prevailing feeling was, I can't really do much. I'm one little individual. And most people, I think they held themselves back by thinking so, that their own individual efforts really were ultimately meaningless. What would you say, how can an average individual, someone, they don't have a major presence, now they have no major platforms, they're not rich, how can they help the rise of alternative tech or new tech, as we might term it?
Well, just having a presence on these networks is important. Being there, setting up an account. I mean, how many people actually have a Wikipedia account? There's actually surprisingly few. It helps them. I mean, using Firefox, for instance, is a browser. They're an open source browser. Most people don't understand that just every time you log in, it's like voting with your dollars. Every time you log in on Minds, every time you open up Firefox as opposed to another browser, you're empowering an ethical alternative. So that is immensely powerful. Additionally, I mean, even if you don't have huge reach, helping us connect with people that you know, helping bring your network in. If you can reach out to more influencers to join the big networks or the alternative networks, these are the kinds of things that help us grow, just getting access to more people. I mean, media is completely changing in how sites grow. You know, it used to be that if you got an article in the New York Times, then suddenly, you're credible. But now what we're seeing is, even if you get an article in some mainstream publication, it's not really going to help your traffic. What helps traffic is true, independent, viral content. So, any connections that people can help make. We just launched a new program where we're rewarding points and potentially dollars to people who refer posts that go viral. So if you go to the group The Great Migration on Minds, and say you get someone to post something on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube that gets hundreds of likes and shares, you get 1 point per interaction. And so we're going to be rewarding people with points for help that they can do promoting us on other networks. And yeah, so we're just trying to be creative in ways to grow.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I actually saw the Great Migration post the other day, so I'm interested in that myself. Now, though, we've got to talk about probably something that would be the most important, since we're talking here on YouTube, as a Google Hangout. The most important thing I can ask here is, what would Minds offer those that are primarily bent towards content creation, like myself? And I'll give you an example. Over the last few years, while my audience has substantially grown, I've seen more and more problems with actually reaching chunks of the audience, notification problems, the subscription feed. It's not just YouTube. Twitter has the same issue. Facebook certainly has the same issue today. You can't even post links, it seems, in Facebook groups, at least in the morning. And so using Minds, for those who primarily, they make videos or they make similar content, how can that help them? What would the benefit be for them to spend a substantial amount of time on Minds? Again, if they don't know anything particularly about the platform, what would be your pitch generally to them to begin actually using it for their fan base in one form or another?
Well, I think that supplementing your social media presence is essential now, because as you're saying, we don't know what's happening with subscription feeds or algorithms on other networks. So you always want to be covering your bases and building up a following everywhere. On Minds, it's easier to gain a following than other networks because of this reward system that we have, where you earn points and you can get more views on your content very easily. So, and I appreciate what you were saying before about our features being competitive in terms of video and everything. I actually think we have a lot of work to do in the video realm, which we are doing right now. So just so everyone knows, we're actually still technically in beta. By the end of this year, we're going to be leaving beta, but we have huge upgrades coming to search and video and blogs and our wallets, and we're working on cryptocurrency right now as well. So all of these things are going to be massively upgraded in the very near future. And so, if you just want to be get in early, your chances of growing are much better by getting in early. And yeah, it's just all about covering your bases. We can't rely on these third-party, non-transparent juggernaut networks that are totally non-communicative with the user bases. We just can't rely on them to get our messages out. I think that they're fine tools to use. I mean, look, we're using Google Hangouts right now. We're on YouTube. They have provided a platform for people to share valuable information. And I honestly hope that they transform. I want to see Facebook bring back its reach and stop, letting people build up these audiences and then suddenly flipping a switch so you can't reach them anymore. I mean, that's really dangerous. So hopefully they can start having better practices in the future. But until then, we, have to do our own thing.
As an aside, I would definitely use a properly functioning, fully integrated blog on Minds would be a great idea, because I already had to move to WordPress, actually, because I was worried when I saw what happened to Jordan Peterson. I was worried that my blog spot, which has nothing to do with politics, would eventually get demoted or taken down. So I decided to cover a few extra bases there. And that takes us sort of into the what I would term, this is, again, my opinion, transitional sites. As you say, you're hoping that YouTube improves, that Facebook, stops meddling with things. But those are older tech sites. I think there's really no argument anymore in most people's minds, including the fans that still use them and don't use alternatives. that those are older sites. Facebook has, I think, problems with the younger demographic, maybe less YouTube or Twitter, but Facebook certainly. Zuckerberg is seen as not necessarily the most likable character in the world, let's face it. What would you say, though, about transitional sites that take the basic same concept as one of those older sites, but they don't dedicate themselves specifically to being ethical or open or pro-freedom, like VidMe? Great example. VidMe is kind of like a YouTube Reddit hybrid. Their terms of service, though, are a lot like YouTube maybe 5 years ago. There's not a huge difference. It's only slightly less, I think, algorithmically manipulated. What would you say, what's the place of those sites? Would you hope that they grow? Do you see them as competitors? Do you see them as perhaps a positive or mostly a negative force, or even a distraction, I think, in the rise of Minds or similar sites?
I mean, if companies are supporting free speech, then I will congratulate them for that. But at the end of the day, for me personally, you know what, cover your bases in as many places as possible. But if a company doesn't share their software and they're proprietary as opposed to open source like we were talking about, I mean, I don't consider that to be truly new or alternative. I think that transparency, cooperative infrastructure are essential parts of where the next wave of social networking is going to go. So, you know, if they're not being transparent in that way, then I'm not really going to put much of my energy there personally. And most people just don't even know that this problem exists. And they think that, oh, I have to keep the code secret, otherwise people are going to steal my idea and steal my platform, and then they're going to compete with me. That's just an old attitude. The way that the license for our code works, which is a general public license, is that anyone can take it, anyone can inspect it, modify it, change it, sell it, do whatever they want. But if you make modifications to the code, then everybody shares the modifications with everybody. So actually everybody's benefiting from the development that everyone else is doing on the code. It's the concept of like steal this album or Creative Commons content. You know, if you unleash it for free, it's that much more viral. So and people still want to contribute to the things that they contribute to. You want to support artists that you create. You want to support tech platforms that are giving you tools for free. And this is what we're seeing on like Patreon and now Minds for the new crowdfunding tools that we have. I mean, we're having users earn thousands of dollars a month, and that's not. People are voluntarily giving their money to people they support because they want to see these projects thrive.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to make, the difference between crowdfunding and maybe the ad-driven old internet. I think most of us have seen that too. And now if there was anything else that you'd like to tell people about Minds, about your own work, any side projects, new developments, anything like that, go ahead.
Great, yeah, I mean, just hit me up on Minds, at Ottman, Ottman. Message me. You know, I try to be as accessible as I can. People who really make an effort to create content, I mean, send me your content. You know, we can feature it. We can get your stuff flowing through the network. We're trying to expand everyone's voice. And, you know, that's one of the most frustrating things to me about some of these huge networks is just, I mean, when do you see the head of Google or Facebook or Twitter doing live streams like you're doing right now? I mean, why aren't they doing it? And it's obvious why they're not doing it, because they know that everyone's pissed at them. They're not being honest, and they're just sort of taking what they can while they can in terms of people's data and whatever. And you know, but it's all coming to the surface slowly. So I think that they're going to be forced to transform their practices. Unfortunately, they think that they have some sort of moral high ground in some of these policy decision making that they're doing recently, but I don't think it's going to last long. And I think that, you know, if you look at how this censorship affects comedy, affects, you know, censorship has to be the policy has to be context-based. And what they're doing is these blanket AI bots that are just deleting content or banning people just because of a word. But a word is a word, and it has to be, there's nuance involved. I mean, it's just, they're just not being honest. And I'm hopeful that they'll be forced into taking a more rational and realistic approach. But I'm also optimistic that not even just us, there are other great open source decentralized projects emerging, and most likely it'll be sort of a network of networks, and we're all intercommunicating. So it's not necessarily one entity that is going to become the next big network. It's going to be more of a distributed community.
And when that happens, I'm going to be able to look back on this and say that I interviewed you earlier than it happened. So, Mr. Ottman, it was a pleasure to have you aboard here for this chat. Very good conversation with you. Again, links in the description of this for those that are not seeing it live, minds.com. He is indeed the CEO of minds.com. Thank you for speaking with me.
Thanks for having me. Let's do it again soon.
Have a good day.
Bye.